Frieren has been the breakout hit of the last season. There's a lot that's already been said about it. The show's a story about an elf re-experiencing the world 80 years after her party defeated the Demon King. What's made it so impactful? It's good. It's really, really good. Alright, so every time a new hyped anime comes out, it briefly takes the top spot on my anime list, gets kind of blown out of proportion, and then people take a step back. The same thing happened with Frieren, and we got the inevitable backlash, though it's still number 1 on my anime list. The show has continued weekly without any drop in quality. Frieren has managed to sustain the best of the season quality level that we normally only get in standout episodes. And it stayed there for 25 weeks. Frieren wasn't just a standout opening, even if its 4-part TV movie was absolutely fantastic. It still hits every episode. It's gone beyond its initial scope and it has excelled as the stories opened up with more varied stakes and storytelling. Why does it still have such an impact? Why has a slower, often slice of life show become the most compelling anime of 2023 and continued to be the best for months of 2024? There's no one single factor here, but a combination that's made it all so special. We can break it down to a few things that Frieren has been a masterclass in. If you're watching this, then you probably already know the setup here. After defeating the big bad, Frieren leaves her party in the opening episode, returning 50 years later as the more lifespanly challenged members of her party do that most horrifying thing: age. A little after reuniting, she's present for the death of Himmel the hero, who Frieren hasn't spoken to at all in the intervening years. This particular death pushes her to reassess her relationships with the wider world. She's moved to try and open up to people and build connections, prompting her life to change. That's just the setup. The opening rightly has tons of praise, but Frieren has remained the best anime on right now for its entire 28 run. The show moves on from there in a really interesting way, starting with how the world opens up. The driving force behind Frieren beyond the opening is the relationship between the elf and Fern. As we saw in the devastating funeral scene for Himmel, her natural inclination is to avoid bonds. But she realises it has been a mistake when Hita passes away too. Frieren decides to take in Fern. Cut to the midpoint of the season, it's a very different kind of dynamic. Frieren and Fern are almost parent and child in some ways. The average dynamic for them is Fern as the stricter one. But this isn't a one-note story. A good example is in episode 17. If you need a reminder, because it's probably been a few weeks or maybe months, Fern is sick and Frieren remembers a similar occasion where Himmel the hero held her hand for comfort. Just like every other memory of Himmel we see, it's incredibly relevant.
手を取れ、フリーレン。君が旅立つきっかけはこの僕だ。
That's it. Good thing you turned on that TV.
I didn't turn it on. I thought you turned it on.
No. Well, anyway, turn it off.
It is off.
Frieren holds Fern's hand to try and console her. Even so many years into this relationship with Fern, the lasting experiences with Himmel are pushing her to actually connect, to go further. A simple show would close this out here, but this doesn't, because Fern is embarrassed to have her hand held in front of people, which is fairly relatable. Frieren might be opening up, but she still lacks understanding in a lot of places. Although yeah, she does get some other human elements. Most of this episode is downtime exploring the interplay between the two characters. Like so much of Frieren, it's about a character trying to connect with someone. Episode 17 managed to have stakes and an interesting thread, or really just dwelling in the characters, their setup and interplay. We might have gotten so much of their relationship told through Montage, but this shorter storyline about holding hands gives us a clear look at how it's developed in the time since Himmel's funeral. A wider reflection of this is Frieren's pointless collection of spells. This is basically the driving force behind her activities. And they're also how she connects with people around her. The spells she used to entertain the party is one thing, but after we see her doing similar things to connect with a much wider array of humanity, like blooming flowers an old woman hasn't seen since childhood, or just the sheer number of times they barter with magical work. Consistently throughout Frieren, we're seeing what was set up in that fantastic opening developed and taken so much further, even just within the first season. Even the episode about her oversleeping does this, culminating in a beautiful scene about watching a sunset and Frieren finding enjoyment through Fern experiencing it. This scene isn't about regret from not seeing something with the party before, but happiness about what can happen now. The show isn't about just regrets. Frieren stayed so good for 28 episodes because it moved on from that backstory. It's about embracing connections. She doesn't cry over Himmel and Hita just because of regrets. There's growth shown. She can and does change after this. The show isn't just about the passage of time, either. It's about character. I think this is pretty strongly laid out in how little Frieren develops over such a long period in Montage, compared to the shorter period we do see as the season continues past its opening. The Frieren-Fern relationship has a lot of nuances from her essentially raising her. It adds a lot. Frieren manages to say a lot with the smallest of plots, although for many, it's that large sweeping relationships that define it. Looking at the character relationships that define Frieren, it would be ridiculous not to go over Himmel the hero. This might be Frieren's past, but it's the relationship that acts as the catalyst for our entire story of development and growth kicking off. After his death, though, the contrast between Himmel the man and Himmel the hero is fascinating. In flashbacks, Himmel is at times a self-involved adventurer, at others very kind. We experience him in two ways. We get Frieren's memories of a flawed but charming guy, someone who left a mark on her so big that it took 50 years to realise just how deep. The other is a legend of the hero who defeated the Demon King. The adventurer almost seems to be the founding myth for the world that sprung up in his wake. There are statues all over the place. It isn't just how he's mythologized that matters here though, it's the gap between the two. This gap is best illustrated by one particularly interesting segment. In episode 12, we see the group go back to defend the resting place of the hero's sword. We find out in flashback that Himmel never actually managed to lift it, yet he still finished off the Demon King. He just didn't have it in him to draw the sword of the hero. Instead, they went on without it, not a word of which was made part of his official legend. Given how important Himmel and his deeds are to the world, you have to think there might be some Frieren equivalent of conspiracy theorists onto this.
There was a second swordsman on the grassy knoll.
Himmel is a crisis actor.
Demon King flesh doesn't cut at that temperature.
Not getting the legendary sword is a juxtapose that fits perfectly with the rest of the way Himmel is represented. There is always the contrast between the legendary hero and the flawed man that Frieren fell in love with. We get heroic statues of him and flashbacks of him wasting time, vainly posing for one of those statues. Having that as one of our earliest looks at this is a fantastic way to do it too, making him a bit of a jerk, just kind of a bit. But it also shows off quickly that he had an eye on his own legacy, a legacy that Frieren is now living in. Telling Himmel mainly through flashback would make it easier to make him seem two-dimensional or simple, just a contrast to his myth. The show avoids this though. He was clearly a meaningful figure at the time too, just more nuanced than a flat hero. By casting such a large mythological shadow over the present day, Himmel in the past and his representation with Frieren breathes life into him. The nuance of both takes makes him more human, even in the small doses we get later in the story. It takes him from this to this. It all serves to draw out just how this one relationship left such a major mark on Frieren, one that thousands of years on her own hadn't done. While the show is clearly about Frieren, Fern is basically the deuterologist of season 1. She gets quite a decent bit of focus, like maybe 20%? Maybe around there? Yeah, there. That's better. She even manages something that Frieren can't by the end. Just like Frieren, Fern chose magic. Even more than that, she chooses it to learn small spells to help people. Their motivation being unspoken but essentially the same is an interesting parallel. In the arcs more centered on overarching stories, we get a lot more of Fern on her own, like the kind of tournament arc we get when they're trying to get certified as a first-class mage, and before in the fight with Lugner. We get to see Fern isolated from Frieren. We get to see that she's taken on board most of Frieren's lessons, outside of one. In fact, she stands as the best example of what Frieren's mentor told her about humanity's ability to surpass her, despite their shorter time. Fern is what Frieren can't be. The more immediate timescale that humans face means that they have to evolve faster. The fight against Qual is great for explaining this in a very literal sense. Frieren explains to him how short time is for men. The humans will use that time much more efficiently than longer lasting creatures. We see this perfectly with Fern. She's already approaching being capable of defeating Frieren, at least if we look at the plan for the duplicate fight. At a much younger age, Fern has become an incredible mage, but we're often reminded that she's still quite young. Seeing Fern as a representation of how quickly humans must advance to Frieren builds its world wonderfully. Fern is a perfect counterbalance to an immortal doing nothing with their time. To an elf, humans must be like one of those cringe, LinkedIn, grind set weirdos. Fern has advanced considerably quicker. She's learned magic after seeing its ability to help her connect with someone at a young age. Magic is also why Himmel and a younger Frieren connect, but Fern figured things out so much faster. Even in an emotional sense, both characters have similar approaches to magic, but the two have some clear parallels which make the difference in speed all the more impressive. Elves are comparatively stunted. Fern sums up how Frieren's world is built. In the recent past for an elf, she's taken on a human student, taught her, watched her growth to adulthood, and seen the guy she hung out with for the equivalent of a few months ago basically become the founding myth of this world. This is all pretty classic of another hallmark that's really helped Frieren to have legs to stay #1 for 25 episodes. Its superior character first approach to the world. The dating that we get throughout the show puts the world of Frieren into a specific context. How long it has been since the death of Himmel the hero, not the Demon Lord. We're primarily following Frieren's journey and development, not the wider world. The character first approach works though. It even makes the world feel more thought out. It doesn't have to dump a whole load of lore on you. It's well written enough to do it carefully. We learn about her mentor and her grimoires much earlier, and it really serves to set up the character's relevance. This is typical of Frieren's world building, especially as the season wound on. The approach to building this world typifies how Frieren has remained the best thing to do on a Friday night in 2024. Outside of the two major arcs, the middle of Frieren is a bit different. It's kind of slice of life, which gets a lot of the hard work done world building without a lot of viewers even noticing. This might also be my favourite bit. I really like the ones where, they're just hanging out, just doing nothing. Every segment here is focused, and it deals with a specific theme, often big ones. We get life after death and other heavy things here, yet each is dealt with tidily. This half of the anime gets an emphasis on the heaviest subject matter symbolically, while on the surface being about the extremely mundane. By exploring in this way, we get to learn about the world Frieren is set in relatively quickly, and without any overloading exposition dumps. This type of world building is a big part of what made Frieren so special going past the opening. This show would not be anywhere near as entertaining if the plotline was written with informing you about the world as the main focus. Anything we learn about this world comes from something character relevant, and that's what's important. It's a far cry from the glut of Ezekis that are obsessed with explaining their specific fantasy world, like these shows. Frieren has to get some exposition about his world out there, but it's never as dull as most shows are. A good example is when we're first introduced to demons, and Frieren's unique approach to them. It involves another Himmel flashback, and it's kind of brutal, like, Tucker vibes. Not to rehash it, but a demon child demonstrates why Frieren doesn't take their speech very seriously. The horror of this flashback and Frieren's past run-ins with demons is fantastic. It's both a gripping flashback, but it also explains perfectly the world and its demons. What it does explain is economical, and mainly serves to build up our understanding of the characters. It's the characters that come first, not grasping some random lore detail. Maybe that Frieren has its roots as a gag manga helped here, but it's made it much more enjoyable than most of the fantasy stuff being made today. Too much fantasy gets weighed down heavy with just explaining their world before their characters. Frieren doesn't. Fern and Stark being symbolically related to the old party helps with all this too. The dual timelines are linked by more than just Frieren's memories. It all ties together. The afterlife stuff is also worth pointing out here. Its presentation in the show is so matter of fact. It is relevant to the story, but not in a way that's overbearing. When it first comes up, it wouldn't be wrong for a first time viewer to just assume this is a random detail, not something that'll ever actually matter. And by the end of the season, it's easy to forget that this is still the quest that we're on, thanks to the journey is the destination style of plotting. The world exists to tell a wider story about the characters. The characters don't exist to teach you about the world, and that's the way it should be. Is Frieren a slice of life show? Is it pure fantasy? Is it action? Is it a comedy? Is it just sad? A sad, sad, depressing show about an elf going to a funeral. Yeah, its opening might sum it up in a lot of people's minds, but it's much, much more than that. Frieren is a little hard to categorize. This is a show which excels on the everyday, the human connection and mortal experience. Yet, it's one that at times touches on much bigger stakes, telling a story which weaves the epic along with that everyday. That downtime in between the big stuff is so often missing. The character first approach to world building has meant it's a story I want to spend the downtime in. Over a lengthy first season, there's going to be a little bit of downtime. The world and characters being ones you want to hang out with really helps with that. It's been a big part of how it's sustained its quality. This, partially, might be what's led to maybe the show's biggest criticism online in the latter half. The action. The non-flashy action has been a source of complaints, but that's wrong. The action only really serves to enhance the character points, which for this style of show is just about right. It's not about the fighting. Even anime that are about fighting work best when there are character stakes and development underpinning the fights. Not just my number is bigger beam spamming. Frieren does this wonderfully. Most major action scenes are broken up with a flashback, which help to make each feel more important for the characters. It also mercifully breaks up the amount of action animation that needs to be done, which might be why the raw flurries of action we do get look so wonderful. These scenes might be shorter, but it takes its time in expressing why the action matters. It's infinitely better than a dragged out show with 20-minute attacks near turn-based combat, just stretching fights out to make it last the budget. The battle with the sealed demon is a great example here. It integrates theme directly into the fight. He even manages to demonstrate something about the world. His magic has become standard a long time ago for humans. It's not been that long for Frieren, but humanity's shorter lifespan forces a different view. What was once devastating is now completely mundane. It renders the fight short, but in the most captivating way. It introduces an idea which is going to go on to be much more important. It even makes the fight far more entertaining than seeing a 1v1 clash for the full runtime. The larger fight with Aura and her men works similarly here. The actual clash is short, but it's again impactful for the characters. The fight with the Frieren duplicate is longer, but it cuts away plenty to give weight to the action. It's all in service of the wider characters, not just to look cool. Maybe the most incredible thing about Frieren's first season has been its use of montage. The opening sequence of course has those fantastic montages, which has been pretty widely celebrated, but it's how Frieren has continued to use montage without the heavy passage of time to lean on that's been really impressive. The show has sustained that top quality in these nearly weekly montages. In our opening montages, we first see Himmel age into an older man in just one montage, while our elf just kind of hangs out. It's showing time is passing. In a symbolic montage of shots, it's the editing that is the content, not the sequence of events themselves. A visual language expressing what you can't through dialogue. No amount of speech could spell the passage of time for Frieren before she revisits the party as this exact collision of shots did. The point of the montage and the gap isn't just to show the passage of time, but to symbolically give you a feeling for how that time was spent. An immortal with a poor grasp of time is a bad character to show in time-lapse. And as we later see, maybe a bad character to take advantage of such a long life. The opening uses Montage heavily to illustrate the impact of a brief period on Frieren compared to how significant a period it was to her party. But later montages tend to focus on the characters building connections, rather than a passage of time. We get a lot of Frieren and Fern using mundane forms of magic to help people. Throughout, the montages are used mainly to convey bonding, going right up to episode where instead of Stark training to defeat a dragon, we get a montage of him interacting and finding a reason to defeat it. In the opening, montage is used to show you Frieren's unique sense of time. Yeah. But later it's pretty different. Some of Frieren's hangout, shorter montages have just as much to offer, capturing the beauty of everyday life. These all build up our understanding of the characters. Like with the exposition, it's character first. These are made all the more impressive by the next factor in why Frieren has become so powerful. The montages in Frieren excel in storytelling of the smaller sides of life, mainly through the power of the soundtrack and the animation here. We'll go back to our very first montage, or Song for the Meteor Shower. It covers Frieren's journey through the world. The sound does just as much as the visuals. Frieren is a rare anime where the orchestral score tells an entire story of its own. It's one of the most enjoyable parts, and one of the hardest to talk about here. I can't exactly play these songs with the visuals to point out how they all line up. If you go back through the Frieren soundtrack though, there's so many songs which almost instantly thunder up thoughts of what was happening behind it. There's something almost visceral about the combination of animation and sound here. It's a big part of what's made Frieren so special. This isn't a one-off for the TV movie opening. The soundtrack is spellbinding all the way through. I think Frieren may go down as one of the best anime soundtracks, at least for its first season. The second part of what's elevated this show above the source material is fantastic animation present throughout. It's a beautiful show. It's clear some shots and episodes are more the focus, but the entire show is fantastically presented. Compared to the manga, there's quite a few places where the animators go above and beyond. In episode after episode, you can find shots which are much more ambitiously put together than their manga equivalents. It's not just complementing the action, but the basic setup throughout. Rarely does the show stick to bread and butter presentation, or even just following what was depicted in the manga. It takes full advantage of its wider medium. The framing's more interesting, cuts are used to build the story, not just add context. It's all a step up. The manga for Frieren is fantastic, but what's made the show the best anime of the last year, at least partially, is down to Madhouse. They've taken a fantastic story, and in any area where it's not even lacking, but it's possible to do better, they've done it. It's an adaptation that's not satisfied simply animating panels. It's making something special. The Frieren anime is more than the sum of its parts. Some of the best art direction we've seen in years, a soundtrack to rival Lord of the Rings, and a fantastic manga as the base. Altogether, it's made the show much more than just these elements. It's a special experience, and one that's managed to sustain this top level of quality for an entire 28 episodes. Frankly, I think it might deserve to be the top of my anime list, at least for long enough to remind any other hit later this year just where the bar currently is at